All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shannon, and I'm a student recruitment representative here at Fleming. I'm located at our Sutherland campus, but I do support students across all three of our campus locations. And today I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Kirstin, who I will introduce in a couple of minutes. But just before we get started, I just want to run through a couple of housekeeping items. So today's Webinar Wednesday program information session will be on the social service worker program. The presentation will run from approximately 12 noon to 12:45, and then there will be an opportunity for a Q&A at the end. So just before we get started here, we are going to play a short video.
Pick up the vibe, always lit, even outside. Smile on my face, don't kill my high. Never stagnate, just passing by. Can't stay still, don't ask me why. Where to next, let time decide. Me and the world see eye to eye. Life's a journey, enjoy the ride. Get rowdy with it. See me on the deck, see live in the mix. Yeah, with the bass one time, let it make the room go crazy. Cause we don't miss. I just go with the flow. Pick yourself up if the mood gets low. Sometimes chill, take it slow. Any bad vibes, hit the road. Hit the road. Any bad vibes, hit the road. Chill, take it slow. Any bad vibes, hit the road.
So Fleming College respectfully acknowledges that we are situated on the Mississauga lands and the traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. Chi-miigwech to the Mississauga peoples for allowing us to continue our work in your territory. And so I have introduced myself, so you all know who I am, but I am joined again today by my wonderful co-host, Kirstin, who will be doing the bulk of the presentation. So Kirstin Parry is the current coordinator of the Social Service Worker Program at Fleming in the School of Health and Community Development and has been a faculty with the program as well as the Mental Health and Addiction Program for 23 years. Over the years, she has trained students in applied suicide intervention skills training and has developed and taught courses in counseling, field preparation and placement, mental health, group facilitation, and documentation. She also has consulted and helped develop programs in the School of Trades and Technology and the School of Environmental and Natural Resource Sciences. With a Bachelor of Social Work degree from Laurentian University and a Master's of Social Work degree from McGill University, she has been a social worker for 29 years. Kirstin has worked with many populations, including children, youth and families, those in conflict with the law, and older adults in the areas of child welfare, sexual and physical violence, family health, and mental health and substance abuse. She is currently a member of the Standards of Practice Committee, which review and recommend changes to the practice standards for regulated social workers and social service workers in the province of Ontario. Kirstin was born and raised in Peterborough and lives in the community with her husband, three children, cat, and dog. She is an avid reader and plays many sports, including golf, volleyball, beach volleyball, and pickleball. So, Kirstin, at this point, I'm happy to hand the reins over to you and to share your insights and more information on the social service worker program.
Well, thank you, Shannon, for that great introduction. Yeah, I pretty much like anything with a ball, really. And yeah, my bio, I kind of think, oh my goodness, I'm tired just hearing about it. But hopefully I can bring some of the experience today and provide, I'm really excited to provide some information today about the social service worker career, but also about the program at Fleming. So let's get started around that. So the agenda will be about the social service work profession first, and then I'll get into the details of our program at Fleming. So a social service worker is called an SSW. That's the acronym for it. And it is a regulated profession. And I'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. But basically, social service workers in Ontario work with people who are experiencing personal and social problems. And we do a number of things to support them, and like offering counseling, and we work in community services and do social support programs. And when I'm talking about people in terms of supporting people, I'm talking about people in terms of sometimes you're supporting individuals, but you could also be supporting couples, families, groups, and communities. So when I was working in child welfare, sometimes I'd be working with an individual, child or youth, but sometimes I was working with the parents or the caregivers simultaneously and the whole family simultaneously, and also sometimes in the community with any other services they might have been working with, whether it was Ontario Works or housing or a mental health community support. And the settings that we provide this support in are numerous and range. So we can provide support in people's personal homes, their neighborhoods, faith-based institutions, educational settings, and health and social service agencies. And so housing could be somebody's private dwelling, so a home, but we have a lot of people that may be in a residential setting like a group home or a retirement home or a long-term care facility. We have people that sometimes have to stay at shelters because of housing issues or violence. And we also have newer programs like those that provide short-term housing for people to get back on their feet, like our tiny homes program in Peterborough. When we're talking about faith-based institutions, certainly we think of churches, but I think you also have to think of other kind of spiritually based uh, uh, places as well, such as mosques and temples, and also just other institutions that provide spiritual guidance. And then you've got your educational settings, so that could be elementary, secondary, post-secondary, and then your healthcare and your social service agencies. So when we're talking about healthcare, that could be any kind of health or medical center. It could be a hospital. It could be public health or a family health team. I've certainly done that work as a mental health clinician. When we move into social service agencies, that could be places like Ontario Works or United Way, where we do fundraising and events planning, working alongside police services a lot of the time, working with people who exclusively address food security issues and programming around that, crisis intervention services, and government agencies like Veteran Affairs and also the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. So it's a broad areas that you can work in if you choose to go into this field. So in terms as an SSW or a social service worker, a lot of people kind of question, well, what can I do since it's so broad? Well, first of all, I think it's really important to know that when you're working with people, particularly around helping them with problems or barriers that they're encountering, you're not in a position where you're telling them what to do or giving them advice. And so that seems to be a myth. A lot of psychologists, psychiatrists, other professionals, doctors, etc., people will go to them and they give a prescription or they give a recommendation. In our field, we go by thinking that the service user or the client is the expert on their own life. So really, when we're working with people, we're assessing, treating, and evaluating and helping you to address those barriers and recognizing that those people also have strengths. And so you're trying to use those for them to achieve a good quality of life. So when we're talking about barriers in particular, you're helping people in different areas. So for example, there's a lot of self and societal stigma that impact people people with developmental disabilities, mental health conditions, substance use issues, concurrent disorders, and dual diagnosis disorders. And actually, if you look at the picture here, these are students that were participating in something called the Yellow Umbrella Campaign. These are students of ours, and it was to address and hopefully eliminate mental health stigma. So you're not always necessarily doing just counseling. So sometimes you're creating awareness about social issues that people face. So this is an example of that. Some of the other barriers obviously are those who are who have directly experienced or been exposed to or perpetuate intimate personal violence. And poverty issues is another one that comes up a lot. So so individuals, families, and communities, they face a lot of poverty issues related to the lack of, accessibility and availability of a sustainable income. We hear that a lot, especially with the cost of living these days and housing and the lack of affordable housing, transportation, food security, employment, education, and skills training. And then also some of the barriers people face are the experience of persons who experience oppression based on their social location. So how they identify in terms of culture, race, ethnicity, gender, age, sexual orientation, language, spirituality. Not all groups are treated the same or have the same access to support. And so we work with people around that as well. So in my role, I've been able to teach, do groups facilitation, and some research and advocacy beyond counseling. So really, when you decide to become a social service worker, you could really do quite a bit of different things in the field, which is quite exciting. So going back to what a regulated profession is, okay, so it means really that there's standards and competencies that registered social service workers in Ontario have to demonstrate in order to work safely with the public. So it protects the public and also protects you in some ways as well, because the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers, which is the regulatory body, determines what you as a social service worker can and can't do in Ontario, very much like the Ontario College of Nursing, the Ontario College of Physicians, the Ontario College of Early Childhood Educators. So it determines what you can and can't do. In order to qualify to register for the regulatory body and to be a regulated professional, you first have to graduate and from a post-secondary education program, a social service worker program that's approved by the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers, like Fleming's program. And you have to have passed all your courses and demonstrated, the standards and at a passing level. And so there is a fee that you do pay on an annual basis, okay? And then every year you pay this fee and you have to continue your learning. So even though you may have your formal education as a social service worker, you have your diploma, you continue to do learning on a yearly basis. And so the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers provides some of that training or that continued pieces through their competency program, but you also get to choose some other professional development that you might be interested in as well. So often you have to review the code of ethics, you have to review the standards of practice and any kind of practice guidelines that they've set out to work with particular populations. Certainly right now there is new guidelines around working with children and youth around consent and confidentiality. And there's also guidelines for working with people who are experiencing intimate partner violence and how to try to reduce the risks associated. So in terms of a job after graduation, every year in Ontario, the Ontario College Student Experience Survey is given out to all students that are taking a program at a college in Ontario, and they tabulate all the data. And so for the most recent, 93% of our graduates are employed in a related field. So that's pretty high. And because it's a diploma level program, okay, so the median salary in Ontario right now is around $25 an hour. So that's just slightly above a living wage. And it works out to somewhere between 45 to 58,000 dollars a year, but it really depends on your experience, the type of work you're doing, and also where you're geographically located. I would say that in some of the larger urban areas, you get paid more than you do in some of the more smaller rural areas. And it also depends on your employer. If you work in a government agency like Veteran Affairs, you're probably going to get paid more than you would be at, a local agency, right? But it depends on the work that's available and what your interest is. So there's lots of available. And in fact, every week every day I look at the Indeed sites pretty much, and I see a number of jobs for social service workers in all the settings that I already mentioned. And I also am sent emails by particular agencies as well on a regular basis that are posting jobs for our students as well. So most recently, it was the Alzheimer's Society of Ontario in Peterborough that sent me something. And also recently, also at Kingston, the hospital, Providence Care Hospital, who's taken our placement students as well. And I would say that in Peterborough, where we're located, that uh, the social service agencies here, all of them have our graduates working for them. And we also have graduates that come back and do a little bit of teaching or supervise our students out on placement as well. So there's a nice kind of circle there that happens. The other thing I wanted to mention, which is a newer, it's not a regulatory body, but it is a organization that you can join even as a student in the social service worker program, and it's called the Ontario Social Service Worker Association. So it's an association that brings together social service workers and social service worker students and other agencies, and it's designed to recognize and celebrate the contributions of those at the diploma level, like yourself, that are working in the field. And it also actually seems to have a pretty good job site as well. And it also can help students with their resume writing and help them connect to jobs as well. So I think that's valuable. And it does have an annual fee, but it's certainly a lot less. I think it's around $75 a year if you wish to join, which is less than the regulatory body. So now that I've kind of given you a little bit of education on social service worker, and again, I encourage you to go on the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers site so you can get more information on that. I want to introduce you to Fleming's Social Service Worker Program and what we have to offer. So I wanted to start first with the fact that it is important that we as faculty have a foundation for the program that meets the standards of practice and the code of ethics that are set by the regulatory body, but that we can also be proud of and get behind as well. And so students are given lots of opportunities to practice both live in the classroom and away from it, with a lot of, both live and written feedback from faculty and peers. And the innovation, I think, comes from the use of simulated activities, both in traditional kind of role plays that we do. So you practice, you have guided conversations and formal conversations with would-be clients, right? And more technical simulations as well in our home lab. So overall, I mean, we have a vision that has the world that's based on equality and social justice. And we want our graduates to be engaged and be responsible members in our community. And so we want them to demonstrate certain characteristics that you can see here. So our mission, in order to reach that vision, our mission is within the program to create, an environment that's really respectful, that's interesting, that provides you those opportunities that I've started to talk about. And we also make sure that we follow the professional standards in terms of creating and delivering the curriculum so that you're really prepared and really ready and confident when you not just go out on your placement, but when you're out in the field and that you graduate. So some of the values, I mean, they really relate to the characteristics we want to see in our students. But you can see here that we really value respect, community, professionalism, and student success. Okay. In terms of respect, we have a really diverse group of students that come to our program. We have students that obviously come right out of high school and are local. We have students that come across Ontario as well. But we also have students that come from far away, right? Like we've had students from Brazil, India, different parts of Asia, so all over the place. And we want to make sure that we respect the diverse student perspectives that come with that and the experiences that come with that. And we also have students that maybe originally weren't in this career, but feel it's a calling. And so they're coming back at a bit of an older age as well. So we have people that are doing retraining. So sometimes we have students that are ages 17 to 60, and we love that because of the different perspectives that people provide. And we have students that speak one language and speak 5 languages. And we have students that are just looking after themselves, but we have a number of students that also have families as well. So we want to respect all those experiences. And community is really important to us as well. So the learning environment, which, is a fancy way of saying classroom, is where community is built. And so because we're small enough, and we have a lot of programs that we share with the mental health and addiction worker program, you get to know students across programs. And you get to know each other's faces and names, and your faculty know who you are as well. One of the things that we're very strict about is people's behavior in the classroom and beyond. So professionalism is really important. And so it comes through following the standards of practice and the code of ethics. But I would also say we work really hard to both support and understand that people have diverse experiences and needs coming into education. And we try to set up, even in our first semester, a learning environment that honors that. And we have documents that kind of really detail the behavior that we're looking for. So very simply, practicing confidentiality and, listening, and even if you disagree with somebody, respecting that they may have a different perspective. So showing empathy and being willing to support people that are maybe struggling with some of the material or understanding some of the material. So those are some of the things we look for, and punctuality in terms of being on time and meeting your deadlines. All those things are really important, not just in our program, but beyond that. And that's what our placement sites and workplaces are looking for as well. And of course, student success. We want to, I'd say in any program, not just the social service worker program, but in any program, personal growth happens. But particularly in our program, because there are a number of assignments where you have to reflect on what you were thinking and feeling and think about how that would influence how you respond to somebody who's struggling and asking for your help. I think there's transformational learning experiences that happen. And so you change over time. So we're not trying to indoctrinate you into anything, but I think you see a bit of a shift in terms of things that maybe you believed at one time, and they've shifted a little bit as you move along in the program. So In terms of our teaching philosophy, these are some of our faculty here having a good time at convocation or graduation. You can see that we're a bit silly. Um, Many of us actually still practice in the field and have a range of experiences and working with people that are in conflict with the law, mental health and addiction, corrections, child welfare, healthcare, children and youth, disability. So we bring that into the classroom. So when we're making points or providing content, we often will lace it with, what we've done, what's worked for us in our own practice, and also the mistakes that we've made and things that we wanted to do differently so that maybe when you go out there, you don't make the same things. But we do expect that, students come ready and prepared. So when you're being asked to do readings and to study and to do things on time and do them with good quality, that's what we're expecting. So I wanted also to show you just a few photos. I mean, I have so many having been here for 23 years, so it's really hard to select things. But you can see here's some pictures of different students. So the first one of the two that look like they're in a counseling session, that's actually taken from a video. So even in your first semester, and your second week in a particular counseling course, you're starting to learn how to talk to somebody about consent and confidentiality, and then moving into assessing and asking them what brought you here, what would you like to talk about, and supporting them while they share some of their struggles. So that actually photo is a clip from an actual video because that's an assignment that's done. So, you get that real world experience happening. And then the middle picture is celebrating the end of the semester. So when I talk about community in terms of what we value, so some of our courses, at different times we'll decide to have a bit of a feast, right? To celebrate accomplishments. So this is an example of that with one of our faculty. And then the last photo is of a group of students that volunteered to happen at open house. So maybe that's something that you would like to do. So you might have gone to open house to hear about the program and other programs and met students. So these are some of the students that have helped in the past in terms of open house to share their experiences. So there's a combination of working hard and having fun, and you can do both at the same time. These are just a few more here. So again, some of the things we do in the program include, like if you see, we've got the home lab here, that's on the first picture there. And in the second and third semester in your professional practice courses, you get to come into the home lab and you do some simulations there as well. So you're actually have people that, interact with you and you have to respond to them in a certain way, right? And you have to help them out. And then in the middle picture is when we were bringing to light social issues regarding gender-based violence. That's the last picture, and support for the 2S LGBTQ community and their family and friends. So again, a lot of the assignments are very practical, and they're actually things that you might do out in the field. So overall, students get to do things like you get to practice interviewing and group facilitation skills for the purpose of engaging, assessing, goal planning, and supporting individuals, groups, communities, families. You get to work in teams, as you can see here, to plan on and off campus events, fundraising campaigns, educational awareness days, and the promotion of, social change. You also, in some of your courses, um, get to do some research to challenge the forms of oppression, as well as design, develop, and improve social service programs that exist. Some of our students have also been service users or clients at some point in their life. And so again, sometimes they're able to say, hey, I used this particular service and this is what was good about it and this was a barrier. And so that might be a jumping point for a student to develop some sort of program or something to make other people's experiences of that service better. And sometimes they're able to implement that as well. We also, because of the energy, it takes a lot of courage and compassion to witness people's emotional pain in this field. So we have a course all about self-care, right, and resiliency. But we also, throughout the program, help you develop self-care strategies for personal and professional well-being as well. I would say overall, the biggest thing is to have both a routine at home when you're away from work and have a routine at work, whatever that happens to be. And that really helps so that you can try to reduce or avoid any kind of burnout that sometimes comes with doing this kind of work. And then um, we also have the opportunity to, and this is part of the standards of practice, but develop the capacity to work with Indigenous people and their communities, given the systemic oppression and barriers still faced. You use trauma-informed care and practice guidelines to do that. So, and I would say overall, of course, the biggest opportunity then is your final semester, your fourth semester, where you get to complete a 525-hour placement. Okay, so it's work and having fun simultaneously. So now that I kind of shared that, like, I want to give you kind of the breakdown a little bit of what it looks like when you're here, you know, what it practically looks like. So, okay, hybrid just means that it's a mix of virtual and face-to-face, okay, learning. So um, you also have 7 courses each semester, okay? And in your first 3 semesters and your fourth semester is a placement. And also within your program, you have the opportunity to engage in the Indigenous Perspectives designation. So let me go through some of what all of that means. Okay, so a semester is 15 weeks. Okay, but at the midpoint, there is a break of a week. So you kind of do 7 weeks, then you have a week break where you don't have any classes, and then you come back for another 7 weeks. All right. And that's even with your placement. So you do 7 weeks of placement, you take a week break, and then you have another 7 weeks of placement. Courses, they can run Monday through Friday, anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. typically. And our first semester of the social service worker program is a common first semester with the mental health and addiction worker program. So meaning both programs take the same courses in that first semester. And I just want to kind of give you a breakdown too. So, because we have a lot of people that kind of ask, well, you know, how much time do I need to spend on campus? Is there any, you know, time where I can do things remotely? All that. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. So in the first semester, and I had to kind of tabulate this. So if you think about 7 courses, each of those courses is 3 hours altogether. So that's 21 hours a class, okay? But it's split up into different things. Most of your courses have a lecture, which is 1 hour, and then a 2-hour seminar. So that makes up the 3 hours per class. But they're not all in person, they're not all on campus. So here's an example of that. Okay, so in first semester, you have 4 core social service worker courses, 2 mandatory general education courses, and 1 communications course. And how it breaks down into that is 5 of those 7 courses have 1 online lecture per week. Okay, so that means 5 hours remotely where you could kind of listen to the lecture, participate in the lecture from anywhere as long as you have good connectivity and a device that works. All right. And a lot of those live virtual lectures are recorded as well. So if you had to miss one because you had an appointment or you were working, then you'd be able to access it later, okay? And be able to review it on your own time. So one course has an independent lecture and an independent hour seminar. So that means the material is provided to you and then you review it yourself. Okay, so that's 2 hours of on your own. All right. And then 5 of the 7 courses have 2-hour in-person seminars. And one course has a 1 hour lab and 1 hour seminar in person, and another course has a 1 hour lecture in person. So overall, 13 hours per week in class on campus, 2 hours of independent, and then 5 hours of you can kind of do it from anywhere, so remotely. Okay, so it's kind of broken down like that. So each semester is slightly different, but quite similar. So I can tell you for the second semester, it ends up being 15 hours a week in class on campus. So again, still 21 hours in total per week, but 15 of those hours is in class on campus. And then your third semester, it's 16 hours in person on campus. And again, it's still 21 hours. So those other hours are either independent or you do it remotely and online. So, and it makes sense that the in-person kind of increases as you go along because you want to be really prepared when you're out on placement in your 4th semester. So hopefully that breaks it down for you a little bit. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to share with you is, okay, so timetables are set up by the registrar's office per semester, but you can make changes. Lectures are set because they have all students in the course at one time, but there can be several sections of seminars. And so that means that students can officially change their schedule using a process provided by the registrar's office. And they usually offer that opportunity to make changes to your schedule just before and during the first 10 days of the semester. And so that may help you figure out, like, how am I going to work? How am I going to deal with like daycare and that kind of thing? So your other responsibilities. Okay. But I have to share with you too, there are no guarantees due to the space and the number of students, so the capacity as well. But there is that option. And the last piece is the Indigenous Perspectives designation. For the social service worker program, students that are interested in this, you take 2 courses, Intro to Indigenous Studies, which is already something that you're taking in first semester. And then you take Intro to Indigenous Knowledges, which is in your third semester and becomes your general elective that you take. And then you respectfully attend and participate in some appropriate and like approved Indigenous events and initiatives. And this gives you the opportunity to participate in activities that promote those kind of respectful relationships and applied learning and professional partnerships. And the participation is acknowledged on each student's co-curricular record, which is a tool that's been set up by the college for students to document their non-academic learning experiences and activities. You can also put any volunteering, so things like open house, but if you're volunteering in your community, you can put that. And this record is validated, and you can use it for your portfolio and your resumes. And the other thing that we also offer, which is a little bit different from some other programs, is we also have a course that you take alongside in third semester called Intergenerational Trauma. Okay. So the piece that I also want to share with you is, like, before you get out on placement, you have to have completed your non-academic requirements. So these don't have marks or grades associated with them. And these, protect you and the college and the placement site. And so they have to be completed before you start your placement in semester 4. So you're required to have a vulnerable sector screening or check, which is done through your local police, an immunization form, which is, whatever vaccinations you have, COVID vaccinations, the WSIB is a workplace insurance form. And then those that are international students do an attestation and undertaking. They sign a letter that indicates that they're able to be in a co-op placement. So that's the other thing that happens as well. So the last piece is the prior learning assessment portion. And in the prior learning assessment, that's done by the registrar's office or an offshoot of it. And typically it's for people who may already have experience in the social service field or another field, and they're looking to maybe reduce the number of courses or maybe not do their placement, right? Because they already have experience in the field. So we have a lot of people that may have come into the field and don't have the credentials and are being asked to come back and do the credentials, but then maybe they don't have to do the placement piece, okay? Because they've already have a lot of experience in the field. So typically you have to apply for that. There's a fee that you have to pay in order to apply. And then you also have to produce proof, so evidence of your experience. And that can be in a lot of different forms. So that could be, letters from an employer. It could be a portfolio. It could be a resume or curriculum vitae. And then it gets assessed by someone, and then they either say, yes, we recognize that you have this prior learning, so you don't have to take this piece of or this portion of the program, and they give you a pass on that. And the other thing that we get asked about is with the social service worker program, you can parlay that into our dual pathway program, which allows you in 6 semesters instead of 4 to have 2 diplomas when you graduate. So both a social service worker diploma and a mental health and addiction worker diploma. And what that means is the dual pathway program, you decide whether you want to do that. You come in either in the social service worker program or the mental health and addiction worker program in first semester. If you decide you want to do the dual program, you do an application, and then you start it in your second semester. And basically what it means, instead of doing a single program, you're doing both programs. So that means you're taking all the courses in both programs. Okay. And so that takes a little bit longer and ends up being 6 semesters instead of 4. But the nice thing is those last 2 semesters, so semesters 5 and 6, are placements. And you usually start with a social service worker placement, and then you move into a mental health and addiction worker placement. And then the last piece is we have a number of pathways to university upon graduation. So if you decide, I've got the diploma, I've got the practical experience, but I also want to make sure that I have more opportunities, maybe more money, that kind of thing, you can go on to do your Bachelor of Social Work degree. You still belong to the same regulatory body, so the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers. And there are many universities that provide a pathway forward, including, but not limited to, Nipissing University, Wilfrid Laurier, Toronto Metropolitan University, where else? Laurentian University. So a lot of places in Ontario, but I want to specifically mention Trent University because it's in Peterborough, and you probably get the most out of it. You get the most credits out of that one, okay, that are equivalent. And also, if you decide to do the dual pathway program, you even get more credits. So Trent recognizes that, oh, you've taken 2 more semesters, so we'll give you a little bit more. So a social work degree is typically 4 years. Okay, if you just jump right into it. But if you've done the diploma program, it probably ends up being about, I would say, 3 years, in total. Okay, after you graduate. But it is a nice way, and we have many students that have done that, and they do really well. They're very comfortable because they already have experience, right? And so they do well in the classroom, they know what they're doing, and they tend to be leaders in those classrooms. Okay, so the highlights. This is it. So, you're if you decide to become a social service worker in Ontario, you're part of a regulated profession, a regulatory body, and that has standards. So it protects the public. It's a varied profession. It's a very interesting profession. You're well supported, and there's a high demand for it right now. So there's lots of jobs and roles and settings to work in. And I feel, and the faculty feel, that our program does, teach what is determined by that regulatory body, and you get a lot of opportunities in class, but also in your placement to practice your skills in order to build your confidence and feel like you can do a good job out there. And we also offer those unique opportunities that I talked about for learning, like the dual pathway program, the Indigenous Perspectives designation, and university pathways. Okay, I think I've said enough. How are we doing there?
That's great. Thank you so much, Kirsten. I definitely learned a lot today too. So we'll move into kind of the last section of the
Yes.
webinar and presentation today, where we will talk about some Q&As. But before we get there, I just want to leave up this screen for a second so anybody can scan that QR code. It will just take you to our YouTube channel where there are a number of shorts where you can hear from some of our Fleming students as to why they chose Fleming, and why that was the best decision for them. So feel free to check that out. And then right as we are doing our little Q&A, Kirsten, I will just get you to put up the last slide, which has both the Fleming student recruitment contact information as well as for Kirsten's contact information for the program. So if you have program specific questions, you can certainly reach out. If you're interested in more general information about what it's like to be a student at Fleming, maybe residents, anything else like that, you want to book a campus tour, you can either scan that QR code as well, or you can reach out to us, ask us at flemingcollege.ca, and those emails will be directed to student recruitment. So that aside, I do have actually just a couple of questions that
Sure.
we often receive from a recruitment perspective, and you did such an amazing job at covering so many of those questions that we typically face. One, again, I would say being students always want to know what a typical week looks like as a social service worker student, and you
Yeah.
certainly discuss the hybrid, what it looks like in terms of the breakdown of being in class and in person versus virtually. Would you say that classes can be scheduled, kind of all across the board, or what would you say in terms of like what a structure would look like from Monday to Friday?
Oh, um, it depends, right? Like, so I would say, we've got you typically you might have something every day, right? But it's sometimes it could be 2 or 3 lectures that are online, and that's your day. And then you have the rest of the day to do your work and work on your assignments. And then the next day you could be on campus for 2 to 6 hours. So it really just kind of depends. And because sometimes we have several sections, students can they get their timetable and then they can kind of switch it up. So we do have students that sometimes will compress their week into, maybe 4 days, and they'll have one day during the Monday to Friday where they don't have anything. And that works for them really well. So it kind of just depends. So there is a little bit of flexibility that way. But like I said, classes in your original timetable could be scheduled anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., Monday through Friday. So we typically don't see courses going till 8 p.m. on Friday, but I always like students to be aware that that is a possibility. And just so you know that while I coordinate, I also teach. The faculty don't have control of when things are scheduled, so I don't get to determine my schedule. So I find out just a little bit ahead of the students of what the schedule is, and I have to, follow what it is. So yeah, it's hard for me. Like sometimes what I do for students is I will pull up somebody's schedule of that semester for an interested student or a prospective student, but other than that, it's yeah. So I would say that you have to expect that you may have something on a Monday through Friday. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then kind of on that same note
Mhm.
too, can you just speak to the typical class size, and whether that's
Yeah.
lecture versus seminar?
Okay, so a lecture would have all the students that are enrolled in that particular course. And so that can range. It could be um, like in first semester, particularly if you're a student that's starting in the fall, that's usually our largest number of students. So it can range from somewhere between 100 to 300 students, okay, in a particular course, and then the seminars get split. So your lecture could be everybody. I would say it's typically at least 150 anyway on average. And then your seminars are broken down into smaller groups. So it kind of depends on the course, but usually somewhere between, I would say, 30 and 40 students in a seminar. Okay, and so you're in a classroom setting, and typically your faculty will maybe has you create some name cards so that everybody gets to know each other, and then you're working sometimes individually on things in your seminar, but also sometimes in groups or pairs, so you get to know everybody in your seminar, which is kind of nice. So while you may have a lecture with everybody, you'll get to know specific people in your particular seminar really well, and they tend to, unless they've kind of switched sections, tend to be in all of your seminar sections for all your courses that semester. Yeah. So you get to know some people really, really well, and other people that you're kind of familiar with because you see them on a regular basis. So that's quite nice. I mean, I just ran into students the other day after a meeting I had on campus, and they had just celebrated somebody's pregnant with their fourth child, so they'd done a baby shower. So that's kind of the community we have, and how people get to know each other. So that's really nice.
Oh, that's great. And you kind
Yeah.
of alluded to this just in the beginning there when you were addressing the question, but just with there being multiple intakes and September
Yep.
being the most popular, are you able to kind of share a little bit more about that, what the multiple intake, what that looks like, and then as well as whether or not the program is continuous, as in, does it run through the summer? Are there any breaks? And kind of what that looks like.
Yeah. So typically we have 3 intakes, but it looks like we're moving back to 2 intakes. So we'll have an intake in the fall. So you could start in the fall in September. Um, and if you start in the fall in September, you would have your first semester in September. Your second semester would start in January. Then you would take a break from May to August. Okay. And so that allows people to work or do what they need to do. Okay. And then you come back and do your third semester the next fall, that next semester, and then you do your placement the next January. All right. So that's if you started in the fall. If you start in the winter, you would start the program in January. You'd take your first semester in January. Um, you don't have a break. So when in May, you would start your second semester. You do your third semester in September, and then you'd take your placement that January. So those that are starting in the winter intake would not have a break. Okay. And the nice thing is that when you have that happening, that means that there are the same courses running per semester. So say somebody needed to reduce the number of courses they were taking because of learning needs or other needs. Or unfortunately, some people sometimes aren't successful in a course. Fortunately, you're able to pick it up the very next semester versus having to wait.
Perfect. Thank you. And then again, all these questions are kind of segueing very nicely because
Yep,
the other question I had, so in semester four, granted, a student has been successful and is able to do their placement. Um, you had mentioned so that with there being the break, the reading week break in the
yep,
middle, the students often stick with the same placement host all the way through, or do
yes.
they ever switch halfway?
Um, Typically, they stay with the same placement host. Um, in order to really do this work well and kind of really experience an agency in all its workings and have the opportunity maybe to work with service users and clients and do different things, you need a good amount of time, and 7 weeks isn't enough. So you stay in the same placement. It's just you get a bit of a holiday at the midpoint, so which is really nice. The only ones where I've seen there has been a switch has been those students that maybe are doing their placement in the May to August timeframe in the spring semester. Um, and and if they are working in a school, obviously, elementary and secondary schools end at the end of June. So typically what happens if a student has a placement in a school in that time period, they would maybe switch to an applied project or something else once the school closure happens for their holidays. So that's the only time where there could potentially be a switch. Otherwise, you stay with the same placement throughout.
Perfect. And I know like one of the more applied learning experiences you definitely touched on today was the technical simulations and
Mhm.
that being a significant part of this. Are you able to share, I guess, maybe an example of what one of those simulations would look like, or, yeah, just speak to what students would be doing in the classroom?
Yeah, in our professional practice courses, they have the opportunity to go into the home lab, and typically what's set up is maybe a social service worker doing a home visit, okay, or a wellness check, and they go into that particular home lab and they are asked to kind of observe what they're seeing. Are there any concerns? Are there any risks? So that's an example. And then they'd have to come back and report, and they'd have to talk about how they'd respond and, play that through. So that's an example of something. The more traditional kind of role plays would be things like um, where students have to do they have to do a whole uh, just a portion of a counseling piece with a new client. So a client that they're meeting for the first time, and they have to explain what the client can expect, and then move into assessment. And they are recorded, and then they have to analyze things that they did and things that they could have done differently, and they get feedback on that. So those are a couple of examples that you would see.
Perfect, thank you. And then I guess the last question I have for you is, is there anything else from your perspective that you would like future or potential future students to know? Maybe even just based on your experience working in industry or working here at the college.
Well, I think that with social service worker, I think sometimes again, and I touched on this a little bit previous, I think a lot of people think this particular profession means you tell people what to do, and you really don't do that. You're supporting people who are struggling, right? And a lot of the time it's about listening and just being there and giving people the space and the opportunity to make choices about what they want to do in their own life and supporting them that way. And I think some people think it's going to be very formal counseling. You're going to be doing kind of you're going to be talking about people's traumas. A lot of the time people really want help with how trauma has impacted them, and you're there to kind of support them because it impacts their functioning, right? But you're not necessarily at the diploma level getting into that depth and breadth. You don't have the training for that. So people need to understand that the diploma level, you're able to do a lot of things, but if you want to go into more formalized counseling and specialization, you'd have to do more education in order to do that. Yeah, but it is a really good starting off point, and it's a valuable profession. And we have a lot of people that have remained at the diploma level that are in management positions now in local agencies, and again are giving back in a way of providing placements, doing supervision, and even doing a little bit of teaching for us. So you never know where it can kind of take you. There's a lot of transferable skills you can use, and it's a very interesting profession as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That really concludes our program information session today. Thank you again, Kirsten, for being here. Yeah, so again, we've left our contact information here. So if anybody has any questions, certainly feel free to reach out.